Expanding reality.
Bernie Taylor, pleasure to meet you, my friend. You're a friend of everyone, and so now I am grateful to be able to introduce you to my audience. Now, before we get into it, all the ways to find you, of course, are going to be located down in the show description. Your website, man, Before Orion, highly recommend. Just if you're out there designing websites, folks, go take a look at it, the way it functions. The information on here is phenomenal. Author of a couple books here, and we're going to get into all of it. You have phenomenal perspectives, and I just, like I said, cannot wait to introduce you to the audience. So without any further ado, let's do that, my friend. The folks out there that's not too familiar with you, in your own words, man, who are you?
Oh, we are friends through osmosis of our many mutual friends.
Yes, sir.
So we were friends before we were even connected. So I'm a naturalist. And that's how I see myself in the world. And as a naturalist, I'm sort of connected to the animals in the world, how they find themselves in time and space. Salmon don't follow one smart salmon, and geese don't follow one smart goose. How does it all work? And if there is a theme to this, could people have known about this in the distant past? Could hunter-gatherers, Native Americans, where I live in Portland, Oregon area, they have known? Is it in their rock art? And if it's in their rock art, could it be in rock art and traditions from tens of thousands of years ago, as depicted in Upper Paleolithic cave art? And that's been my journey since about 2000. To explore these concepts and find who we truly are. Are we smarter today than we were 30, 40,000 years ago? Or do we just have better toys? And that is where we're going to go today.
I don't even know that we necessarily have better toys. Like, we have some with like little lights on. But I mean, as far as, you know, you hear about some of this ancient technology, allegedly, or just some of the stuff that's been speculated even, from tool marks or lack thereof on some incredible stuff in stone, their ability to sort of mold stone, like what was doing that? What's moving these things? The sound acoustic technology type stuff. It's all awesome, and we're here for all of it. So we can't wait for this. Like, this is going to be absolutely outstanding. All the ways, again, guys, located down in the show description. Where would you like to begin, my friend?
Well, I believe a great place to begin would for me to show some images. And while I'm talking about the images, you play that guitar that's there in the background.
This little guy?
Just strum a few chords, just a little bit, nothing heavy, no rocking out, but so you decide if you want to drop in with a little tune. I'm cool with it.
That's fair.
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a share screen. And we're going to go places. We're going to go places in North America among Native Americans. And we're going to go deep in time, tens of thousands of years ago, to our origin story. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit share screen. And I'm going to do a full screen, entire screen. And then I'm going to click it. Oh, and then you have like multiple versions of yourself. You're like in a multiverse, right?
Wow, yeah. It's
okay.
Trippy as shit. Audio only audience, just want to note here, go ahead and check the show description located down in the show notes down there, that little area where we have all the links and such. Find the video version of this, because he does have a phenomenal bunch of slides and presentations and pictures. Already it looks cool as shit. And I know Bernie here, so I know this is going to be amazing. Check this show description so you can get the full enjoyment of this, or just listen to the audio and then on the way home, check it as well. All right, Bernie.
Absolutely. And now the presentation title is Meetings of the Earth and Sky. Okay. And we're not talking about ancient aliens here. I'm not down in ancient aliens, but this is not where we're going in this.
Fair enough.
And we're going to go to Lakota in the Black Hills. The Lakotas are one of the many Native American nations. And the Black Hills are the intersection of South Dakota and Wyoming. If you've ever... when I came out to Oregon some 30 years ago, I came out from the East Coast, and I drove by through the Black Hills, and I saw Mount Rushmore, and I remember seeing other geological formations on the way. And when I drove by, it was during Clinton, and the federal government was in crisis, and they'd shut down financially, so all the public parks were closed, but they were actually open because you could just walk in. So I went in for Mount Rushmore without paying the $5 fee. But I also didn't have the advantage of like the hot chocolate and things like that.
Yeah, but did you find the tunnel and then go in the back and find all the secret rooms and shit?
No, well, because we didn't have a guide.
We'll go with you.
Guides were federal employees and they were off. They were on vacation, unpaid vacation.
Right on.
So we're going to go into the Black Hills, and the Lakota of the Black Hills traditionally would have a springtime migration or movement, and this was a sacred group in the Lakota. This is not all the Lakota, and they would start outside of the Black Hills at a place at their winter camp, and in the winter camp, they would look to the night sky just before the sun rises, and they would see the constellation Triangulum, because it looks like a teepee. It's a triangular shape. And so they saw the Pareidolia in the night sky, and they said, this is our time and place. And then as they moved along, the vernal equinox came along, they would start moving through in a clockwise fashion through the Black Hills. And when they reached the Harney Peak, which has lots of jagged peaks, they looked to the night sky before the sun rose, and they saw the Pleiades and the seven stars of the Pleiades, which they saw as seven daughters. And the seven daughters, actually seven girls who were placed into the night sky by their hero, Starboy. And so it was a kind of a ceremonial way of protecting the girls. And then they move through the night sky, and they find the stars of Orion and Sirius and Canis Major, and also, again, the Pleiades as an animal. We really don't know what this animal is, but it's called Tyamni in Lakota. It's believed to be the fetus of the buffalo, but no one actually really knows that, including Lakota. And then they continue on. There's a center of the Black Hills area where it's kind of just flat, and that's Pesla, which is the center of their cosmos. And then moving on to the next step is Bear's Lodge, which is Gemini in the night sky as the Greek constellation. And it's actually Bear's Lodge Butte, which we know as Devil's Tower.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're seeing things that we know. We're connected to the Lakota myth. This is not in their imagination. And when we look at Devil's Tower, we saw these vertical lines. And it's the Lakota tradition is that the Starboy saves children by lifting the ground into the air as a butte. And as the butte is rising up, the bears are scratching down. And that's why we have these deep lines, these deep vertical lines in Devil's Tower, which was Bear Butte Lodge to the Lakota Sioux. To Lakota, I shouldn't say Sioux. Sioux, by the way, is a derogatory word among the Lakota. It's a word the U.S. government used. It came from the French. So Devil's Tower is the place. And at Devil's Tower, they had the Sundance, and everybody's heard of the Sundance one way or the other. Okay, and the Sundance was held at the summer solstice. So, and that's where they saw Gemini rising just before the sun. And they would typically be a dancer that was on the sort of hanging on the pole, and there were dancers that went around it, and they were sewn. So there was sinew that was sewn into their chests that they had to break through the dance, and the dance usually took 2 or 3 days.
Hang on, they had.
But we're gonna go deeper back in time.
On their chest.
Oh yeah, they sewed it into their chest, and so as they danced around, they had to break free, and they couldn't finish the dance. They couldn't finish the dance until they broke free.
Yeah, we just sort of breezed over that. I just want to make sure that we caught the illustration here is a couple of indigenous Lakota, right?
Yeah, Lakota. Yeah, the Lakota. And what they had to break through, and if they couldn't break through their own, the elders would kind of pull them out, because some of these dancers would faint before they broke free. So it was and you can identify Lakota who's done the Sundance in the present time because you can see the scars on their chest. This is like the real deal.
Thank you.
My understanding is that I wanted
to make sure we pointed that out.
Yeah, white people can't go to this unless you're some sort of Lakota white mix. Okay, but this is not a show and tell. This is not Disney World. This is a sacred tradition that's been going on from the Lakota standpoint since time memorial. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back deep in time. We're going to go back to 34,000 years ago into a deep cave. And this cave is Monte El Castillo. It's called the El Castillo Cave in Cantabria, Spain. And Cantabria is at the northern part of the Iberian Peninsula. And I'm traveling there in September. We're traveling there to not just visit this cave, but visit some of the landscapes in the area.
Awesome.
So we'll go to the gallery disc so we can look at it. It's about 10 meters across. maybe 4 or 5 meters high, and there's a bunch of discs running across it. And we're gonna step into this cave, and we're gonna see where the origin story is, in the same way that we looked at Lakota through the Black Hills. And but can I ask you a question? Did you just hear some sound in the background?
I did not.
Okay, good, because I had this is that's we're good. Okay,
Oh,
so
you're
just
great.
went through my computer.
Oh, yes, sir.
We're good. Okay, so on this panel, we find this teacher and the apprentice, and the teacher has these big red white eyes, the same disc that run across the panel. And the teacher has kind of a big nose. You can see kind of his hairline of sorts, and the apprentice looks like he's in amazement. And on the shoulder of the teacher is a golden eagle. It's a fledgling golden eagle that stands about a foot tall. And we can tell it's fledgling because it hasn't grown any wings yet. We can see some down on its chest. And that fledgling golden eagle becomes the hairline of the teacher. They become one. We find this character. I call him the cosmic man, and he wears a mask. If you look to the viewer's left side, you can see that there's a beak that comes off his mask. So he's become an avianoid, a bird man. In his right hand, he holds an egg, and his left hand is against the wall. And then he has his left leg is raised as well, and he's a guy. We can look closely at the mask of this cosmic man, and we can see the eye that is on his left side of his face. It's etched into the rock. We can see a lot of blue there. Then we can see a close-up look of the beak that comes off the side of his head. On the bottom, we can see his chin. We can see some teeth in there. Kind of a really cool image, about as cool as you can get. We take a closer look at this, and we can see that the teacher with the eagle on his face, when you turn your head to the left, becomes the mask of the cosmic man. So this teacher has transformed through the juvenile eagle into the cosmic man as this bird man, this avianoid, such that you find throughout Mesopotamian traditions. And we find a speckled mare. You can see it's kind of turning its head to its right, and it's turning down, and it's leaping forward. And we call it speckled mare because we see the red disc speckling up the animal. Well, this horse is a Przewalski horse, which is now like in Siberia or something. And it's kind of mulish, doggish, however you want to put it. But it has a raised mane in the same way we find the raised mane on this Ascaridus horse. And the cosmic man merges with this horse to become this cosmic rider. They become one, like as Greeks would have seen a centaur. We find a transformation between another transformation is that another character puts on a mask, and he becomes the cosmic man. And if you look at his left hand and his left hand behind him, that is the same left hand as the cosmic man, who has his left hand against the wall. They're the same character on this journey. We also find a mother Iberian lynx. And you can see the juvenile, the kitten, pushing up against the rough. And we can tell this is off really mid-June time period for the lynx as well. It's keeping the story in its time and place. Well, we find a crab underneath underneath the ledge. And it's got huge claws. And I saw this. It was maybe about 3 years after I first saw the gallery of this image, I saw the origin of this particular crab. And the origin of this crab is actually Pareidolia. And it's Pareidolia in the Rock of Gibraltar, which is a long way south. It's on the southern end of the Iberian Peninsula. And we can see the opening in the rock looks a lot like this crab. Pretty cool image. Now, one could say, well, you've shown us a whole bunch of animals. Why can you just say just the crab? Well, we can look a little more detail in the crab. First of all, is we can see the actual the right arm and claw as Pareidolia in the rock. This is by nature, the forces of God, however you want to say it. But the cave artist saw this as a crab, and it's right by the seashore. Well, we can look at another animal that we saw earlier, which is the horse, and we can find the features of the head of the horse in the same area on the Rock of Gibraltar, just above the crab. We can see the raised mane Brzezowski's horse, new to it. We can see the peak of the head, and we can see the under of the muzzle. So this is Pareidolia. Nobody etched, nobody engraved this in the Rock of Gibraltar. By the way, the Rock of Gibraltar is limestone, as is the Gallery of Disc substrate. So nobody did this. Okay, this is Pareidolia. But the cave artists saw the characters, they saw the features in this, and they moved forward and said, this is divine of sorts. We also find a monk seal, a huge monk seal in the panel. And we can see the head of the monk seal again in Pareidolia. We can see the hind flipper in the same area. And this is on the north end of the Rock of Gibraltar. And we also find the spinning-nosed dolphin, a spinning bottle-nosed dolphin, I should say, and on the same gallery disc's face. The Pareidolia source of it on practically the full length of the Rock of Gibraltar. We can see the lower fluke, we can see the dorsal fin which sticks up, but more importantly, we can see the beak mouth at the south end of the Rock of Gibraltar. Really cool image. We're talking about Pareidolia. This was not made by divine forces. It wasn't made by ancient aliens. This was there already, and the Paleolithic artist saw the Pareidolia and was inspired by it, such that he brought these images back to the cave. And so where does my illustration of the Rock of Gibraltar come from? It comes from multiple sources, but I have two of them here. On the top upper right, as you're looking at it, you can see recent photograph of the Rock of Gibraltar, and below that you can see a historical illustration from about 1800. And so I took out the man-made stuff and left in the meat of the Rock of Gibraltar, of the length of it. Most importantly is look where the arrow is pointing. Underwater, there's a feature. Okay, now 34,000 years ago, there was a lot of the ocean water was held in glaciers. So it was about 90 feet deeper than it is right now. It's actually 90 feet shallower, I should say. And so that feature that we see there is marked by the red would have been out of the water. We also find this therianthrope, the mix between the dolphin and the man that was transforming into the bird. So he becomes a merman of sorts. Find this female effigy on the gallery disc, and she looks pregnant to me, and she looks not very happy. And this female character is founded in Pareidolia, on the Jebel Musa in Morocco, which is on the other side of the Strait of Gibraltar. Now, I didn't discover this. This is it. This is people in Morocco. They see Jebel Musa, but they don't see it as a pregnant woman, even though it looks like a pregnant woman. Jebel Musa is either biblical Moses or another biblical prophet. So my suggestion is that they're finding all these characters in Pareidolia in the natural world, or in the natural geological world. We can look. The Strait of Gibraltar is at this point is only a few miles. I think it's 10 miles or so. You could swim it in a few hours. At least a good swimmer can do it. And if you're standing on the Rock of Gibraltar looking southward, you can see Jebel Musa in the background. So people on both sides could see that there was another side. This is not any great mystery. And the Spanish coat of arms shows the two pillars, so Hercules. And we find a breaching humpback whale also on the gallery disc. Really cool. It's kind of leaping out of the water. And we see our hero in the belly of the whale. Now, the humpback whale is also found in Pareidolia. It's in Pareidolia that overlaps with the dolphin. And we remember earlier we saw the subsurface feature at the southern end of the Rock of Gibraltar, and that becomes the fluke of the whale. So it's really cool. And the rostrum, which is like the mouth of sorts, sticks up at one end, and the dorsal fin at the other. That's like pretty cool. Now the humpback, our hero, is can't actually ride in the belly of the whale, but rather the hero is in the ventral pleats of the whale. That's where Pinocchio was, and Gestapo. They're not in the belly, they're in the ventral pleats, because nobody can actually ride the belly of the whale. And so we have Pareidolia on the Rock of Gibraltar that gives us this image of the ventral pleats. And then so we can see them overlapped, both the whale and the dolphin going in two different directions in the same space on the Rock of Gibraltar. Then we also find this pareidolia of a face, and it's the same face as our apprentice with his big wide eyes. And I show it from multiple directions, multiple perspectives. And this is pareidolia. Nobody created this. If you look at the top of the image, you can see an observatory to really see the scale. Now, it is possible that sometime in the distant past, people took ropes down and they, knocked out a few pieces to make the eyes a little better. But this is fundamentally pareidolia, and it's pretty amazing pareidolia from a concept. And on this, going around the corner, going a little more north, we find our bird, our eagle, and at the beak sort of comes off the top, and the crest feathers are the flora, the plants at the top of the ledge. And if you turn your head, if you turn your head to the left, you can then see that the beak becomes onto the cosmic man's mask. The cosmic man is not as clearly defined, or none of this is actually clearly defined, but we can see the relationship between the two. And in this image on the gallery disc, actually the gallery disc is projected onto the characters onto the Rock of Gibraltar. It's a little busy, but you can see where they all stand next to each other, or swim, or fly, or they're all there. And it took a lot of time to organize this image. And we can also see that this is not just it's also a geographic map, because on the northern end of the gallery disc, if we tilt it up, on one end, we can see that these are all Iberian animals. And on the other end of the gallery disc, we can see the woman that became Jebel Musa. And in the middle, we find the marine animals. So that in the middle is the Strait of Gibraltar, and they all overlap with some degree with each other. Okay. Now, I was an astronomer before I started working on this stuff. I was an amateur astronomer, a very amateur astronomer. And I improved my game a little bit through this. And I dialed back the clock to 35,000 years ago using a program called Starry Night Pro. And it's the same program that they use at, if you go to a planetarium. And what we can see is that in that time and place in midsummer, we can line up the constellations, so we can see that they are in fact the exact same constellations as on the gallery disc, and that we found in the same order on the Rock of Gibraltar. So on the north end, we find Hercules, and as we move south, we find Aquila. We find the eagle. Pegasus is the horse, and the eagle gives Pegasus wings. Okay, so they merge together. Then we find Pisces, which is the whale swimming north and the dolphin swimming south. And Cetus becomes the seal that was changed by the ancient Greeks into a whale. So this is actually Cetus as a sea monster, and they called it a whale. And the Greeks changed the dolphin in Pisces to two fish, which they inherited from the Mesopotamians, because they already had some constellations. And so they put them in other places. So the dolphin becomes Delphinus and the whale becomes Cetus. So when we can reconnect the earth and sky as we start the program, is that the traditions of the Lakota are almost identical to those of the Paleolithic cave artists 34,000 years ago. So are these people connected? The Lakota were there since time immemorial. Well, we can actually travel around the world. We can find many stellar traditions that connect the earth and the sky. And I would suggest that, yes, the Lakota found their own constellations, their own asterisms, because they looked to the night sky, and Bear Butte Lodge, it looks a lot like Gemini, or Devil's Tower. And they saw these peaks and all these points in Harney Peak, and they said, well, there's a 7 here. We can call those the sisters. And they start off in the late winter, or actually the opening of spring, and they had their teepees that looked a lot like Triangulum, the constellations. And there's other features too that they project to the night sky in the same way the Upper Paleolithic cave artists did. But they each found these things independently, but they had the astronomical traditions going back for tens of thousands of years. The Lakota didn't invent astronomy. They what they did is when people left West North Africa and Europe and they traveled around the world, they took these traditions with them and they used new animals and new geological formations. They found new pareidolia that they then projected into the night sky. So this didn't happen 12,000 years ago with magical peoples on ships after a comet blast. This goes back for tens of thousands of years that we find these traditions around the world. And it's just, I think it's amazing, or it's awesome that we can find it in North America among the Lakota. And so the Lakota had this sun dance. So did the cave artists tens of thousands of years ago also have a dance that they connected with the cosmos? Did they have such rituals? And I would say, of course they did. We don't know the details of it, but yes, they just didn't look at the night sky. They just didn't look at the pareidolia in the rocks, and they just didn't, carve these on the walls of a cave. But there was symbols and those rituals, those ceremonies about them that they connected all the three. And this is a quick blip of my webpage, beforeorion.com. I use Bernie Taylor Before Orion for everything. You can follow, you can subscribe. There's a lot of material out there. I love just doing it. And this is like my story. So I'm going to pull out a screen share now, and we can have the talk.
That was so cool. It's so interesting what you found. So you mentioned David Warner Matheson before we got on here. Have you spoken to him, or have you guys connected at all?
Yeah, we've communicated over the years, and he's a good guy. He's a really good guy, and he's taken it. He's on like his own spiritual journey or his own psychological journey, and I think that is awesome. Okay, I'm not on a psychological journey. I mean, not this perspective away. I'm actually looking historically, and what I think he does really well is he helps people to see constellations through his methodology. And that's, so you went out there with contact in the cabin, and he helped you see the night sky. This actually, you could see the night sky too, if you remember, because there's many other animals, many other constellations. If you remember the story, you align yourself north to south, you remember the story, you can have your eyes closed and you can say where every constellation is. Because it's following the story. And the same way as the Lakota Sioux did. You point in the right direction, you know where Gemini is going to rise. You know where the Pleiades is going to rise. And you know the story of how this cosmoscape came to be through the bears that chased the children up the butte that was made by their hero Starboy. And we still see the striations of the bear's claws on there. And so it's like awesome mythology. So I've taken a different perspective because I'm going deeper in time, like deep in time. And I don't believe this started 34,000 years ago. I think because we see the record of it 34,000 years ago. So people were looking at the night sky. People were looking at these pareidolia before they ended putting them on the walls of caves. So could it have been 50,000? Could it have been 100,000? Could it have been 150,000 years? I've pushed up the clock from roughly 6,000 years for astronomy, known astronomy. I pushed it back that we can actually match it to 36,000 years ago. Why couldn't it have been 136,000 years ago? Yeah. There's no reason why not.
So what's your thoughts on that? Because Established Man says that age is not mankind has not been as smart as we find evidence for us being back in the day, let's say, just for in ancient times, for lack of a better term. On your website, in fact, you have something about Göbekli Tepel. So what have you found that kind of, do you agree with the official narrative as far as the mainstream goes with that?
Yeah, Göbekli Tepel is a good one. And this I think will be I've done over 100 podcasts, and I've done a lot of conferences, like academic conferences. And I think right now this might be the first or second time that I talk about Göbekli Tepel.
Really?
Because you asked the question.
Well, you have it on your website. I thought it was awesome. I have to ask you if you're.
Oh yes, but I never talked about it in terms of astronomy. What I did was I was debunking somebody else's stuff.
Well, now I'm curious about both instances. What's your whole take on Göbekli Tepel?
Let's talk about it. Absolutely. Please. This is the story. Okay. So Göbekli Tepel arises between 11,000 12,000 years ago. It's more or less. Okay. Something else happens at 12,000 years ago. Cave art in Europe ends. It just stops. No more. So the younger Dryas would have taken a part in that. Okay. Well, what also happens is rock art just explodes in North Africa. And we actually can see there's a DNA backwash about 12,000 years ago into North Africa. So North Africa, the Sahara is the greatest museum in the world, but it's also, the Sahara is a big place too. So 12,000 years ago, people started moving out of the Iberian Peninsula, and they moved south, and maybe they moved to Turkey, the Armenian Plateau. So what's the link? Well, there's a few links. One link is language. So the language, the current indigenous people of northern Spain are the Basque. And the Basque is somewhat enigmatic because people are like, where did they come from? Because their language doesn't tie to any groups, other European language groups, Indo-European. Well, they actually do tie to Armenian. And the Armenians have been yelling about this for about 100 years. And the Basques say, well, where's the archaeological evidence? But also what the Armenians are saying is that they brought the language over 7,000 years ago when they brought agriculture to Europe. So 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. Because agriculture, we can see where it developed now in the region of Göbekli Tepel. Okay. But what came first? The art at Göbekli Tepel or the dawn of agriculture? Göbekli Tepel. Because remember, Göbekli Tepel was made by hunter-gatherers, not by people who had agriculture. Agriculture came later.
But do you think...
So if there's a connection between the two, it wasn't 7,000 years ago. It had to be 10 to 12,000 years ago, right? Logically, right? So this is interesting. So I showed you this image of the teacher who transforms into a birdman. Okay. And that image is at Göbekli Tepel. Okay, so here it is. Everybody's been looking at it. They've been calling it the vulture. Well, first, and we can take a quick look at that vulture. First of all, it's not a vulture or it's an eagle. It's a raptor beak. That's what we have, a raptor beak. The head is round. And so vultures and eagles don't have round heads. They have flat heads. So therefore, it is not a vulture or an eagle, but it has an eagle, a vulture beak. The arms are way too short for any kind of raptor. So someone put the arms on it, and I have no idea what's going on the legs, but they have nothing to do with vultures. But there's a key ingredient to that image, and that he has the character has a V-neck. A V-neck. All right, look at the V-neck. Okay. Vultures and eagles don't have V-necks. They don't have that long thing going on either. But if there's a museum tied to Göbekli Tepel that has the characters of a human character with a V-neck. So what we have going on there is we have a human putting on the persona and the wings and the beaks and so on of a beak of a raptor to become a birdman. Okay, so we have this, that's an avianoid that is nodding. And people can go look online. I challenge anybody to find a raptor with a round head like that. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It just isn't a thing. So what we do have is a birdman. And very interesting is that we find below the birdman, we find a scorpion. Now, this Göbekli Tepel is on the Armenian Plateau, and they didn't have crabs. So what we're looking at the same image we saw in the gallery disc that originates from the Rock of Gibraltar. We have the man, the teacher, who transforms into the birdman through the constellation Aquila, and below him he has the crab, but since they didn't have crabs, they changed it to a scorpion. Okay, so this is the same image that we found at the Rock of Gibraltar. We find on the in the gallery of discs, and we find it in the night sky. So people are talking about sickness and all this sort of stuff. They're off. They're completely off. They're missing that it's not a vulture. Totally impossible to be a vulture. They're missing that it is a bird man. It is a shamanic type of character. I don't like to use the word shaman, but it's really a Siberian word. But this is a shamanic character who has transformed to go on his spiritual journey through both the night sky and the terrestrial plane. And we find this character, Göbekli was about 10,000 years ago, right? Which comes after the gallery of discs. Now I find the same character in other Upper Paleolithic images, and that are between 36 to about 22,000 years ago. So this was a tradition through the through the Paleolithic ice age, that when these people they left France, what is now France and Spain, when they went to Turkey, the Armenian plateau, and when they brought their language to the people in Turkey, they made these great monuments. And then 7,000 years ago, when the Armenians brought 8,000 years ago, when they brought agriculture back into what is now Spain, it reconnects. So there are words. So we've talked about Pareidolia in the mountains and represented in the caves. Actually, multiple examples of the same thing going out through time. And what happened is early on, they had like one geographical, basically geological site that had lots of Pareidolia that became lots of constellations. But as they spread out, they couldn't refine that same geological formation because it's impossible because there's so much detail. So what they did was they would find this mountain looks like a bear, this mountain looks like an elephant, and this mountain looks like an eagle. Okay. So we have Basque names for those mountains. One of them is called Chindoki. Chindoki has no current meaning. Chin actually has no meaning in Basque. It just means that's Chin. Doki means place. But Chin and Doki have meanings in Armenia. And Chin means bad, so it means bad place. But it's not really a bad place. It is a place. And Chindoki in Basque tradition is where their deity Mari, who's like the chief deity, lives. And storms come from behind Chindoki. And behind Chindoki, this mountain, from the perspective that you look at it from the cave art, there's a cave. It's called Marizulu, which is Mari's cave. So Mari, actually, they still think that. And Basque people still climb the mountain, and they still revere Mari as coming from this cave. And we find this Chindoki we find it in two different caves, and they're roughly 5,000 or 6,000 years apart, and they're both in that northern area of Spain. So we're Göbekli Tepe. Okay, so in summary, Göbekli Tepe tradition came from Upper Paleolithic Europe. It came from these Ice Age artists, and it came from geological places. And when these people left during the Younger Dryas, and people can argue all day long about the Younger Dryas, how it came to be, but when they left, they traveled, and they went to South Africa, or let's say North Africa, I should say, and they went to the Armenian plateau, where art didn't emerge from nowhere. This is art that already existed. The difference is that when they moved, they didn't find the same caves. They couldn't find these sort of caves that they find these limestone walls that they could etch into them. So they created caves with the pillars. So all they need is a dome the top, and they create that darkness. So you can have darkness during the daytime with the ceremony. They created the caves, and they created this cave art simulation within these tepe structures. There's multiple of them. The timing all works out. Now, on this cosmic impact thing, the so-called cosmic impact is 1,300 years before the beginning of Göbekli Tepe. Doesn't match. People just like say, "Wow, it just happened." It didn't just happen, because there may have been a comet impact. I have no issue in that one. And that was the article you saw in the Physics Today. And I said that's cataclysm or catastrophism. It's a way of, it's like the Mayan calendar ends and the world ends, right? It's the same concept, same people. But what I'm saying is that it is the same narrative of looking at the night sky. And the only thing they do is they switch the scorpion for the crab. But here's what's interesting. In Greek mythology, the Hercules, when he goes to the shore, he fights with this huge crab called Kornikos, and it grabs his leg, in which you can actually see in that image. You can see the crab is next to the man's leg, and he kicks the crab that goes into the other end of the night sky as the constellation Cancer, and in its place is a scorpion and another mythology. So what we do have is the original story has a crab that we find in the Pareidolia, but the story changed as it traveled when there were no more marine crabs to fill in that place. And so they switched it out with another, I'm not sure what the right word is for crabs and scorpions, but they swap them out. And that's why you have the scorpion at Göbekli Tepe and not a crab, because the myth had already evolved as it moved. When the Greeks picked up the myth, they had to explain why the crab was Cancer over here, because they inherited it from other traditions.
Damn, that's interesting. Side note, do you think that scorpions look like lobsters like they're mermaids? Look at lobsters like they're mermaids?
Yeah, I kind of do. Yeah.
Right?
So whatever the word is, but that's not the merman we saw in the image, but
No, it's
it
total
became
cyber.
they they swapped the two out.
Yeah, but it is interesting that the mythology changed out. It's just from a crustacean to sort of a land station. You know, they just have the
Yeah.
similar claws and crawl on the ground. So I get the similarities between the two, and you could just replace that in your land-based mythologies rather than the sea-based one. And it is
Yeah.
interesting what you said about the vulture man, the man in the costume here, because and I'll just pull it back up here again. Audio only audience. If you have not yet checked the top link in the show description. We're having fun online over here. We're showing pictures and shit. Okay.
People, you got to get on. You got to look at the images. This is the story. This is the story that changes all stories. That we're rewriting history on this podcast right now.
Right, meow. Bring it, Bernie Taylor. I love this. You got me fired up, dude. So this is the scorpion you were talking about that's reaching towards the leg, and then mythology, he then yeets this thing out, or the crab, right? Or he yeets the crab.
Yeah. Hercules kicks the crab across the sky.
And the scorpion's
But
left.
he fights with the crab corner coasts in his labor.
Yeah, and it's also represented in this pillar in Göbekli Tepe. And it's also interesting, too, because you have another round-headed bird here. This one looks more crane-like or pelican, perhaps, if that is what that is, and we're not missing half of it. But here we have another circular-headed bird, but it does not have necessarily the delineation in the V-neck. So this does...
Right, so and the hero on his journey, he encounters animals that he becomes part of. He interacts with, melds with, like a Theranthro. But there's other animals in his environment.
Yeah, and I like your assessment though is sort of backed up here by the fact that there's a line here, and it does look like a mask rather than the bird head that flows here.
It's only a mask, obviously a mask. Come on, it doesn't look like. You gotta say, Bernie, I'm a believer.
Bernie, I'm looking at your work and I find it very interesting. Check this out though. These bags at the top. Have you noticed this? Have you you talk about this?
No freaking idea. And you've heard about being the summer solstice and the winter solstice. I don't buy it. I don't know what it is. And somebody needs. You can't come up with a good argument for what these bags are, if in fact they are bags, until you've actually deciphered the shamanic character with the vulture mask. So it's all part of the same scene. So I actually haven't gone there. I've been working on other stuff, and what we're doing right now, I was going to do this winter on podcasts. But you asked the question.
Oh, dude, we're
going. I mean, you like blew my program.
Well, it's good because then maybe later on, maybe we're bringing things up here, and this is a safe place to learn and grow, but together.
Absolutely, yeah. Nobody's listening.
Everybody's listening. So if you look here, you obviously have these bags here. Again, we're just going to call them bags for the sake of Okay. And then there's a seeming hand reaching down from the top of this thing. If you can see it.
It's actually some sort of, I think it's like an animal. It look like I don't know what it is, but it's an animal.
The reason I bring it up is because if you look at the Sumerians, they actually have this hand represented in that way. And so just
freeze right there. Wait, freeze right there.
Sure.
Because what do you also see in this image? You see a Birdman.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And you can go around the world and you can find the Birdman, whether it looks like these,
there you go,
or it's a native indigenous person with a headdress.
Yeah.
So this is where it starts. Actually, it doesn't where it starts. Where we pick it up is 36,000 years ago in the Upper Paleolithic cave art by the man that overlaps with the bird to become a Birdman. But the tradition is probably much older. So all these come from the same place. Every one of them. This is not something you can also find the fish man in these Mesopotamian images too. And we saw the merman, which is a fish man.
Yeah.
So we're finding the same characters over and over again. So lots of people, they're like bouncing back and forth and Göbekli Tepe and Mesopotamia. What's the connection? The connection is tens of thousands of years earlier. The story did not start at Göbekli Tepe. Now, I'm a huge fan of Göbekli Tepe, but in terms of the timeline of what we're talking about, I'm here in Portland, Oregon, and we're going to call the present being in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. Jacksonville, cool place, right? Love it. You know who came? The Freebird people came from Jacksonville.
Skinner
wrote the song about Sweet Home Alabama, right?
Yeah.
We never went there. But anyway, storyline is that if you travel from Portland on this timeline, Nashville is Göbekli Tepe. And then we're in the present around here in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. Think about that timeline. The story did not start in Nashville. Love country music, turn it on once in a while. Okay. But the story is tens of thousands of years before Göbekli Tepe in traditions of caricatures, astronomy, and art that they inherited. And then so actually, Jacksonville, we'll call that ancient Mesopotamia, right? Okay. And all these images you're seeing right here, we're in Miami. Okay. And so think about that timeline now. It's pretty hot in Miami right now. It's probably like 110 degrees or something. But so these characters that we see in ancient Mesopotamia in Jacksonville come from much earlier traditions. And they didn't get it from Göbekli Tepe because Göbekli Tepe was buried under the ground. They picked it up from other earlier tradition people who had been to these caves, such as the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians went to the caves and they brought back all this stuff. And they also brought it to the ancient Egyptians, who then transferred it through the Greeks. So these traditions, these ideas, these characters, this symbology, this astronomy is just so much earlier. When people are looking at Göbekli Tepe as the birthplace of temples and civilization, all that sort of stuff, it's a great story. You could probably sell it on Ancient Aliens, but it has no basis in prehistory, because today you made the connections between the whole bunch of them.
Yeah, they're right here. I mean, in many different cultures. There's the fish gods you were talking about. It even looks like Teotihuacan over here, and then Sumerian, and then you also had Mayan represented over here next to another depiction of a Sumerian god. And it is interesting.
Okay,
go ahead.
So the bags, okay, for the Mesopotamian bags, I have no opinion on those bags. But I do have an opinion that the Mesopotamian birdman traditions come back tens of thousands of years before them. It wasn't 12,000 years ago magical people sailed around the earth and taught brown people how to stack rocks. It is a tradition that goes back tens of thousands of years that went across Europe, that went across Asia, went across the Beringia, the Bering Strait, went into the Americas, North America, down to South America. And we find these traditions. We don't find it in the art of Native Americans, and we find it in their ceremonial garb. We find the Birdman freaking everywhere.
Yeah.
And the first Birdman we see is at the Strait of Gibraltar, and we see it depicted in the Gallery Disc.
So you're thinking all of this was anthropomorphized from the Strait of Gibraltar first, and then also connected to the heavens, or do you think that it was a global civilization that had it connected to the heavens, and therefore just sort of had a scorpion instead of a crab, but they sort of had a connected mythology? Or so back to the question, was it the rock that inspired the mythology, or the mythology that was inspired by the
rock? Inspired the mythology. The rock inspired the astronomy.
Okay, that astronomy. Thank you.
Okay, and that's why a lot of the characters in astronomy don't look anything like the animals we think they are. It's because they were founded in astronomy is Pareidolia, the constellations, and they found in other Pareidolia that was at the Rock of Gibraltar. Now, you just asked a question that I didn't answer myself until about a month ago, and you didn't even know you were asking the question. So about a month ago, there was a huge find in South Africa. Homo naledi buries the dead, and makes art. Do you remember that in the news?
I do
not. It was like splashed everywhere. It was like everywhere. Anyway,
to be fair,
CBS,
I don't want
CNN. Okay, so anyway, so they're saying 250, 300,000 years ago, Homo naledi was just as smart as Homo sapiens, meaning us, and they made art and they buried the dead. So I have no opinion on the bury the dead thing, but I actually looked at the art. Okay, it is identical. I mean, absolutely identical to Homo sapien art at the Strait of Gibraltar, and I'm sorry, at the rock in the Rock of Gibraltar. It's called Gorham's Cave. It's exactly identical. The same characters in the same order.
What was it called?
It's called the Gorham's Cave is the one in pull up my webpage, beforeorion.com, and go to the blog link, and it shows the images. It's called Gorham's Cave, and I call it the Gorham etching. But the cave in South Africa, which is also on the blog, is called the Rising Star Cave. There you go, right at the top. Give it a click. You're like really good at this stuff, by the way.
Dude, do you have a great?
I've only been on one of the podcasts that was as good as you in doing this, and the other podcast had two people, and one was running, and you of course know who they are.
Oh, Grimerica, our boys. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the boys.
About this.
One guy's running, and the other guy's doing the interview. So
Yeah.
that's the Gorham Cave right now. Go up a little bit. Go up. So that's the go down.
Oh,
So okay, stop. Freeze
cool.
frame. You can
Boom.
play that in your guitar. Okay, so this is called the Gorham etching, and all the images except the one you see in front of you of this etching or engraving are covered with dirt. They're literally covered with dirt. And I bought the image from the photographer, the clean image. And so that's what I was using. And it's absolutely full of pareidolia. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just go up a little bit. We're gonna skip two screens, two images, go up, go up one more. Okay, go there, freeze there. It's the same thing. Now, the guys who were in the South African cave, they recognized that the hashtag was sort of the same, but they discounted it because they wanted to show that it was intentional art, but they didn't actually look if there was anything in the intentional art, because they just said, well, this cave, nobody's been there since 300,000 years ago, therefore it must be Homo naledi. They didn't know anybody had been in there since 300,000 years ago. So we're gonna before we go down, can you take a look? Do you see anything yourself? And it's okay if you don't.
I'm just looking here at a few things. Over here in the upper right, there seems to be a few different characters that I suppose upon closer inspection, if we could zoom in maybe. Looking right here, it looks sort of like a seal or a whale, maybe.
It's a bird. It's a bird. Yeah, good. So what you see is a neck and a head and a beak. So that's a bird. Yeah. In fact, a bird's coming out of a nest.
Right here.
Yeah. So that's a nest. Yeah. So it's popping out. So it's a I don't know, what do you call a bird that just pops out of a nest? Out of an egg.
Oh,
so yeah, that's good.
Baby bird.
So what you're doing, you're seeing patterns. That's really good. And you're not just seeing patterns because we just did the whole thing with the Gareth disc and the Rock of Gibraltar, but you visually have the ability to see patterns, whereas other people, maybe they're like really good at like counting numbers. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down a little bit. We're going to drop down a few frames. Go down, go, keep going. Go up, down. Actually, go. Okay. Freeze frame. Okay. And what we see is when you look at the top here, you're starting to see something going on. That's the head and neck of a bear, a standing bear.
Up here.
And on the bottom is we see this huge head of a
right here
profile of a bear. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, now I see it. Yep. See a little ear.
Now you see the ear. Yeah. And first time I drew this, I didn't get the ear right. And because I'm right-handed and I couldn't see around what I was actually tracing. And you can see the eye down there. Pretty cool. I mean, this is about as cool as it gets.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay. And this is covered with some sort of the sand or whatever it is in the bottom of the cave. So you're not looking at colors.
Right. This looks like a little dragon.
So anyway, we see characters, and this is actually identical to. Let's drop down. We can see some more.
Yeah. Before we move on, this looks like a dragonfly. Is that anything, or are they indigenous to the area at all?
The dragonfly?
Yeah, the two wings here, and then the long body, the thorax. I don't know if this is.
You know what? I don't see that, but I think that's cool. I'm gonna go actually look at that.
Yeah, you might get.
I'm gonna go look at that.
It just kind of this area here, and it's actually you could see it a little better in this other picture.
Yeah, my screen's too small.
Right here. That's okay. Sort of right here. You know, it sort of looks like a maybe, I don't know, little dragonfly. Anyway. All right, let's go.
So how I do it. Hang on. I've got an advantage that you don't have. And what I do is I print them out on big.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know, it's awesome. So I take it out. I get the images. I take them out of Kinko, and let me see if I see that one. So don't go anywhere. The problem is I got a lot of these things. And I'm working on.
You're okay. While you're
multiple projects. But anyway, let's continue down the screen. I'll take out your dragonfly later.
Yeah, and then I was curious to see if you laid this pattern over something like Nazca lines or something to see if it matched up. Or
so the answer is no, and Nazca lines totally confound me. Okay.
I know, right?
And yeah, so here's actually what you look. The cool image is where A there is actually B. B is a mother bear with the cubs between her forelegs.
Right here. I see it.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
That is very
So
cool.
that's actually the same bear as you just saw earlier.
Okay.
And there may be some cubs between the bottom bear, actually the bottom one in the earlier image with the profile. It is, in fact, the same bear. And there's other characters on this panel that we can go around and see that they are, in fact, the same animals and in the same order. Sometimes they're upside down relative to each other, but they, in fact, are the same ones. And I do a 2-minute, maybe 3-minute video on the Goron bears. And I go through this, that this is Ursa Major traveling through the night sky. Oh. And the hashtag is the lines in Ursa Major. So the bears travel with the lines, that is Ursa Major, that is in the night sky. And the origin of this image is a place called Mulhacen, that is the tallest mountain on the Iberian Peninsula. It's like the bottom fifth of the peninsula on the Mediterranean side. So it has a Pareidolia origin, just like the other ones that we saw with the Rock of Gibraltar.
It's very cool. And it looks down here almost, I'm sure this is probably a bear claw that you've noticed, but do you think this could be a man's hand putting a bear mask on?
No, what we have actually there is you have climbing bears. There's 2 climbing bears. Right. And I'm going to tell you a little about the life of a bear, okay? So we're here, right?
Yeah.
So mother bear teaches her cubs to climb a tree whenever there's danger. And at a certain point of life, when the mother needs to move off from the cubs, the mother chases them up a tree, and then she runs so they can't find her. And it's how the mother bear works. Okay. And so what we see in that image is we see the mother bear. First, she has the cubs between her legs, and then the cubs get older, where you saw that hand, and they're actually climbing. And in mythology, you typically find the bears are climbing into the sky at that season. That's how Ursa Major actually turns, right? The constellation turns. And then there's another mother bear at the top of the D at the image. But let's not stick on this one, because this is Goron, right? That's what awesome. We want to know is, here's the mother bear, the gallery of discs, which we didn't do. Mother bear looking at her cubs climb the tree, right?
Oh, and yeah. I see it.
You see it, right? And by the way, the first time I saw this, I was like, what the heck are they doing? Are they sleeping? Is she teaching them how to dance? I don't know. Then I kind of look back into what if the life of the mother bear.
Look at this. It looks like mom bear's dead because her eyes are closed, and baby bear's like, and his mouth is open right here. It's like, oh no.
Yeah, she's chasing them up a tree. Yeah. And that's why they have their arms out like that, in the same way that you saw it on the previous image. Okay. And so this is another on that Rising Star Cave, so-called Homo naledi, but it's not, in South Africa. And we see a horse. And what they did was, this is in relief. So they saw what we see is called like the muzzle or head of the horse was probably out a little bit. It was extruded. And then they chipped it off a little bit, and then they dug into it. So they found natural lines on the panel that they then sort of sculpted out.
Yeah, a lot of indigenous peoples do this. I've seen this quite a bit. This is very interesting.
Then we find the horse we previously saw on the gallery of discs.
I'm curious if you've deciphered the speckles. What do they mean? Are they a counting system of some kind, or are they to orient the image?
Well, they're all based on the direction of the constellations we saw earlier. They're all north to south.
Right.
So right away, it's about navigation.
But
what they are is these animals will overlap with each other. If you could separate the animals, they become stars in the constellations of the animals. And I started to do that. It's a lot of work, because I can see what it is. I don't need to sell the work. So I continued on this direction of finding more examples of the same, rather than, the intensity of it is, it would take me a year to literally do it. So we find this other mare on the Goron etching. And so we find a mare on both the gallery of disc, we find a horse on the Goron etching, and we find it on the Rising Star Cave. And then on this Rising Star Cave panel, we find a giraffe. In fact, we find 2 giraffes. And this stumped me for a little bit. And the small giraffe is that to your left.
Yeah, I see
my
this
left.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that. And so the mother giraffe the juvenile is nuzzled up against the mother, and they're both sleeping.
Oh, the head's here. Yes,
that's the head. So you can see.
Here.
So the top of on the bottom of the juvenile, you see the horns, and the top you see the muzzle.
Yeah, I see it.
Isn't that cool?
Well, that is very cool.
that's like yeah.
Wow. And then little.
And so they didn't look at the images. The research team, and they went out to the world press, were freaking everywhere, saying that they had discovered Homo naledi art. Homo naledi was just as smart as we are, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But this is not Homo naledi art. So on another panel, we have a giraffe, and there's some more images going on there, but they're too dirty for me to figure it out.
Okay.
And then here we have a giraffe on the Gallery of Discs, which we didn't do, and we have the mother, the juvenile, wrapped around the neck against the mother. You see that? Cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. So we didn't go there. Okay. And then we find two more giraffes on the Gore matching, which I showed earlier. Now this is now I'm going to put freeze frame right now. This is interesting.
Okay.
So when I was working on the Gallery of Discs image back in 2014, 15, someone was helping me. He's a wildlife biologist, and he identified the Gallery of Discs one with that we saw as a Maasai giraffe. Now, this guy knows if it's a Maasai giraffe, which is from South Africa, he knows it's a Maasai giraffe. This is the world's foremost wildlife biologist, who was the mentor of Jane Goodall. Okay, so when he says it is. Okay, and we scratched out chins and we said, well, maybe Maasai giraffes were further north in Africa, and so we cut because there's giraffes in North Africa at this point, and who knows what was here, which giraffes were there 36,000 years ago. And so we scratched out chins and we just like, okay, well, I'm not going to go there. Well, when this thing popped up in South Africa with giraffes, I recognized that my Gallery of Discs giraffe, Maasai giraffe, is that my giraffe. They're connected. It's the same narrative, it's the same story. So those people in South Africa had been to the Iberian Peninsula. They had been to the Rock of Gibraltar. They had seen these same images because they're both Maasai giraffes.
Damn. What constellation does the giraffe represent? Do you know, or does it?
I don't know. In fact, I have like 90% of them. But the giraffe is one of them. I could guess, but I don't know.
Your guess.
And because it is a lost constellation. Now, there's between the three images. Before I showed you that on the Gallery of Discs, the dolphin and the whale overlap with each other. Mm-hmm. On the Rising Star Cave, we found a shark and a whale overlap with each other.
Yeah, right here is a shark. You can see that.
And then you can see the whale at the top, and you can see the ventral pleats where it's all pecked out to the down. That's the ventral pleats.
Right. Yeah.
You learn like all about mammal biology today, aren't you?
I love it. It's marine
biology.
I was going to say a mammalian, but there you go.
Oh, yeah. And so here we found this earlier with the dolphin and the whale on the Gallery of Discs. And then we find right
there, bam.
We find elephants. There's two elephants. It's at least two elephants, and the mother is over the juvenile, the smaller one.
Yeah,
cool stuff, right?
It's very cool.
And what you're looking at is they pecked out. This whole thing is in relief, in the same way as Göbekli Tepe images are. So they knocked out around it so that the elephants, this whole part of the elephant area was lifted.
And that negative.
We find elephants on the Gore etching too. Now where the elephants are on the Gore etching and the this South African cave are in the exact same positions relative to each other as are the giraffes and as are those marine animals you just saw. Wow. We'll see that later. I kind of overlap.
Yeah, this negative relief, just to go back to Göbekli Tepe for just a second, just to show an example of it and how challenging this is. And this is, so just to be clear here from something you said earlier, was it that you think that agriculture came after this? That they basically
Yes, absolutely. Agriculture came after Göbekli Tepe.
Look at that.
There's no argument about that. There's no argument. But remember, the upper Paleolithic, so this is cool stuff. But how does this compare to the Gallery of Discs?
Well, so this is a 35,000 year weathered version of what it probably looked like earlier, or something like this.
No. What I'm saying that Göbekli Tepe is 11,000 years or so ago.
Right. And so the ones we were showing in your blog are the much older ones, but they may have looked something like this before they got weathered down by.
No, they didn't, because they're all in deep caves, so they didn't get weathered. So in terms of they didn't get weathered because they're in deep caves and they weren't exposed to the elements. So what we're seeing though on Göbekli Tepe is it's cool art, but it's not of the sophistication that we see in these upper Paleolithic images. So people without agriculture did very high level art, as did the people at Göbekli Tepe. They didn't have agriculture. Agriculture came later. And we can tell that by the genetic history of the plants. And nobody argues, nobody thinks that. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, even in alternative world, nobody's saying that Göbekli Tepe people had agriculture. It's not a.
I think the reason is because to create something like that, you needed some sort of civilizational infrastructure to feed people to be able to create a project on that scale. And that's why they say some sort of establishment of agriculture or some sort of top-down system of feeding all of these people. Because while you're etching, I'll go hunt for you, or while you're
correct. I'll go hunt for you.
I'll go,
which is the same thing.
or I'll go
cave images.
Garden for you. Yeah, one or the other. But so there may be a blend over in there. Now they may not have needed to go to full-blown, rows of corn and things like that. And I understand that, but there may have been some sort of trade-off in time. And this is why they say they weren't surviving per se, because there was time to do this. They weren't running away from a bunch of things. And so therefore they had it kind of easier than if they were nomadic or moving around, because you needed to stay in a spot and do this. You needed some sort of food supply to be able to keep these workers doing this. And then you needed the skill to be able to do it in the first place, which had to have taken hundreds of years, maybe thousands or longer to acquire. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting.
No, I'm saying tens of thousands of years. I'm saying it goes back to 36,000 years
right,
ago.
Right here. It's interesting, man.
Keep going down. Let's see more stuff. We got a few more to go. So we see there's elephants on the gallery of discs. There's actually two more that's not in this image. This is actually the same elephant. So if you turn your head to the left and the right, you can see that they are in fact the same. One with its ear up and this one with its ear down and drinking.
Wow. Did you do the by the way?
Yeah, I did. And it derives from another place of pareidolia that we did not talk about today. And that's why, just like we have the pareidolia on the Rock of Gibraltar, that the images shift back and forth. It's because it's overlapping pareidolia makes four different characters.
Right.
So there's the bird, the kind of bird down there. I don't know what kind of bird it is. And you can see that you can look down, you can see the egg hatch coming out of the egg.
Yeah, like right here.
We have the right in there. You see the egg. Yeah. And then we have the standing bird. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I've kind of looked around and then there's the bird that we saw on the gallery disc standing on the teacher's shoulder. Cool stuff.
Very cool.
And this is an unknown animal on the Rising Star South Carolina. I don't know what it is.
It looks like that screaming goat. Have you ever seen that? The picture of the screaming goat and they put metal music to it?
It actually does look like a goat. I think you might be on something here.
Like a baby.
It does look.
Kid baby goats, they kind of look like this. Now it could be a griffin head based on this thing over here, but based on this outline here, especially with the elongated neck, this meh sort of thing, no horns yet. I'm going to call this an ear. I'm going to say it's a kid goat.
Yeah, that's an ear. Yeah, that's interesting. Goats an interesting look. Yeah, I don't know. So what I did on this one, you won't be able to see the detail, but I went through all the points on these animals that people can go look.
Very
so
cool.
you're gonna skip this one because we were seeing okay, now here we go. Go back up. This is important. Go up. Okay, this is important. It's a little hard to see, but what I do is I overlap actually show side by side the Gorham etching and the Rising Star panel. And the Rising Star panel, I actually had to put two images together to make it. I think you got to go down. Okay, up. It's up. You got to go up.
Yeah, I made it too big.
No, you're good. Okay, down. There we go.
There we go.
And what you could see, so what I did was I put the letters. A is the muzzles of the equines. Okay. B is the heads, trunks of the elephants. C is the heads of the giraffes. D is the lower necks of the giraffes. E is the heads of bears on four legs. And F is the intersection line between the whale and the other marine animal. They're the same.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That is, it's like, it is. So the question then becomes, which came first?
Yeah.
The Gorham cave etching or the South African Rising Star panel?
What do you think?
I'm asking you first. Come on, I got
Well,
lots
I'm
of
gonna say
opinions. What do you
based
think?
on the theory, Africa, because that's the out of Africa theory is sort of the.
Okay, but no, we're not talking. We're stepping beyond that stuff. What we're doing is we have a new reality today, don't we?
I'm going to say
We're
based on the
expanding our
information
reality.
we absolutely are at every time. And thank you for the drop in. You get the sound effect. What I would say based on the information you've delivered here today, the Gorham Cave, the Gibraltar, because it was based on the rock.
Yes. So we could say that. So absolutely, we can say that we can say is that the Pareidolia came first. Then it was brought into the caves. So we can't say which one was made, which art was made first, but we can say is that though there are features at the Rock of Gibraltar that also are all the same as this, that are on both of these images. Now, but here, let's go back again. Remember I said that there was a Maasai giraffe, okay, on the Gallery of Discs and there's also the giraffe on this one. They had to have seen the giraffe before they made both either the Gallery of Discs or the Goremetra. They had to have been to South Africa to see that giraffe. So this is what I haven't actually got all the right images yet. But the giraffe derives from Pareidolia in South Africa on a mountain face.
Really? Which mountain?
Yeah, so I have the piece of the image. I'm trying to find somebody who can trounce around into the Drakensberg to get me a better image.
What's the mountain?
Well, it's in the Drakensberg. It's a mountain area in the Drakensberg in South Africa, and it's on the path to go to the falls. Now, these falls are actually, I think, the biggest or second biggest in the world, certainly the biggest in Africa. And so I haven't found I need a better image. And the image shows the elephants, and it shows I've got the heads of the giraffes. What I need is like someone standing 5 foot over to the right.
Yeah.
Of this thing, and it's when people are walking up this path to go to the falls.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to link all the ways to find you in the show notes. So anybody that wants to go to South Africa with Bernie, it's on him probably, right? Yeah. If you need them to stand 5 feet away, you'd be tax writable as a production assistant. So, I mean,
it's in the Drakensbergs. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll head over there. And if you can't find anybody in like 3 weeks, I'll go with you, dude, because this sounds amazing. I'd love to do that.
Well, we're going to Spain this September. And next year, we're going to Göbekli Tepel.
Where's that?
Göbekli Tepel is in West North Africa. Morocco is the tallest mountain in North Africa, and it is one of the other Pareidolia sources that we didn't do today. So actually, the elephants come from the Pareidolia of Göbekli Tepel. Now, Göbekli Tepel was known in the ancient world by another name, and the name was Mount Atlas. And in Greek mythology, Perseus has the head of the Gorgon Medusa. And he climbs up Mount Atlas, and he meets Atlas, and he turns Atlas and everything to stone through the gaze of Medusa. Then Hercules later, his cousin later, comes up, and we have the story of him stealing the apples. So the Pareidolia was known among the ancient Greeks, and they explain the Pareidolia through the gaze of the Gorgon Medusa, who changes everything to stone. Man. So we're climbing Göbekli Tepel next year. So this a year from September, it's about 4,000 feet.
That's wild. Well, safe travel. So cool runnings to you. If you've ever seen the movie, that means peace be the journey, right? And
you mean not coming?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you don't have anybody to come with you, I'll absolutely strap up, and the wife and I'll come with you. But we'll have you back on either way to talk about this awesome adventure, and then whatever you find out there. I wanted to cover a couple things here before we wrap. Pareidolia. Now, what's fascinating about this is it's the tendency to perceive a specific, often meaningful image in a random or ambiguous pattern. Now, there have been folks on the interwebs, and my friend, we don't take a stance here, but we do talk about the ideas, and we shall do so now. There's this page that I keep talking about that I haven't pulled up on the show yet, so we're just doing it. It's called Sibs_on_Insta. Okay, Sibs on Insta. Their whole thing were the rocks were alive. Now, just take a stroll with us on this. We're not going to hold you to any of these ideas, but to introduce them.
No, I'm totally with it. So here's the deal. So there's Pareidolia all around the world, and people see it because but when it becomes spiritual, it becomes significant when someone takes that pareidolia, they then put it into the night sky as a constellation, or they put it on a stamp, like the face of the man in New Hampshire. New Hampshire became a stamp.
Right.
We find pareidolia reused all over the time, and we see things, but it becomes spiritually significant, or we have a record of it spiritually significant when we see it on the wall of a cave, when they replicate the pareidolia. So people have been doing this stuff all around the world since the beginning of time, and it's probably what spirituality probably came from mankind's ability to see pareidolia, because we saw a supernatural in the world, and many people could see it, and they said, "Oh my God, this is something that is not of our making." There you go, Devil's Tower, and so which is it's made from the claws of the bear, as the hero transported the children up into the sky to avoid the.
What do you think about the idea that things were just huge at one time? Like huge, people, everything, because they've found skeletons of giants, even though the Smithsonian has done their best to cover them up. Also these types of things where, dude, this is a tree. This is an ancient tree. So the Devil's Tower is another one of these things where they look at this and they say, even the way it fractalizes and breaks up, the claw marks are a cool way to describe what's occurring, but scientifically, what's more accurate to what they're seeing is that it's an ancient tree. And now what you're talking about is this massive tree like this. And these are just little saplings compared to this thing, but still hundreds of feet tall. So then the question is what about this pareidolia? Pareidolia, thank you.
Pareidolia, yeah.
Thank you. What if it's true? Like, have you considered it as just like a thought experiment that maybe this was a damn elephant?
So this is my perspective. Okay, so people in distant time, they saw this pareidolia, and they saw these huge, elephants and huge people and huge whatever, and they interpreted that as in an early time there were these massive giant characters. So if we look in Basque mythology, they know that. I shouldn't say they know it, but they say so. It's in their mythology that the earth, the mountains came from the end of the earth. When they came from the earth, they created these huge giant-like characters. So this is where we all come from. This is animism. This is the original spirituality. And so when people, were there giant bunny rabbits like that? Absolutely not. But people would have believed there were giant bunny rabbits, and they would have origin stories to explain these giant bunny rabbits, just as we have the origin story to explain the Bear Butte Lodge in the Black Hills that is also connected to the night sky as in Gemini. So it's like it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But the people have had, so I didn't invent that concept. The Lakota had it long before I came along, and it was published in a literature by people who lived among the Lakota, and they documented this in these traditions. So yes, we find it all around the world, but no, I don't believe there were giant bunnies like that one. But I believe that people in the past saw that pareidolia in that rock, and they believed there was a giant bunny, and therefore they could have been told in myths that we have to our day that have this. Just isn't the case of Bear Butte Lodge, Devil's Tower, with the bears. I mean, they must be pretty big bears to make those striations, right? I mean, that's the thing. Maybe that necessarily wasn't a bear. I mean, maybe the bear was, but seems like it was if you take the story, then what you're hearing, it presupposes that trees were that big, which maybe bears were that big, but maybe they weren't. But it also definitely says what you're looking at is a giant ancient tree. And then when you look at things like this, even within the mythology, it says that. And then when you look at stuff like this, where a tree stump right next to this, I mean, it's this as above, so below. And this is on just such a mind-blowing scale that I think it's kind of challenging for us to even wrap around this, just even for funsies. It's very, very interesting, though, because when you look at the correlations, and again, whenever you look at, there are so many rock formations out there that are trees, not rocks. So again, you look at something like this, after looking at that tree and going, maybe that dude slept under that tree at one point. You know what I mean? It makes the mind go. I'm not saying there's any factual evidence based on it other than the pareidolia that we're able to anthropomorphize onto these rock structures. But
It's just interesting. I find the whole thing fascinating. I think what you do is awesome. I think you're a delight. So you're welcome back any damn time. We're gonna wrap it here on just reminding everyone that the video version is in the show notes if you haven't checked for that yet. Also, that all the ways to find you are located down in the show notes, and we're looking forward to seeing you after your trip. But beyond that, I wanted to ask you, sir, to close out for us and just let us know what gets you out of bed every morning. What keeps you ticking? What keeps you moving?
And besides anticipating you to play guitar when I was going to do my slideshow.
You got to come see it. Come in. Come hang out with us next August. Not this August 24. We're doing another Contact at the Canyon with Grimerica and everybody. We're committed to that. So you got to come. I do bring the guitar for that.
Okay, that's when we look at the stars, and I can explain to you about it. It's not an ancient tree, but rather the bear lifted the star boy hero lifts the ground into the sky, and the bear made the striations, so that we have completely different worldviews on this one. Absolutely. But anyway,
I think your way is cool too. I find the mythology fascinating. If it's just a rock, it's cool as shit. It's just the whole thing is awesome. You know, I don't plant my flag. Like, I'm fine if it's all like, if it's flat and round. I'm totally cool with that. If this is just all simulation, I'm fine with it. Like, I just have fun.
So what gets me out of bed in the morning is to have fun podcasts with people like you.
Come on.
That's it. That's why I woke up this morning. I mean, I had a full day of work, but this is really the end of my day was really to share. I mean, I wasn't ready to go down the road to Göbekli Tepel. I wasn't ready to go down to the Rising Star Cave in South Africa. You've kind of pulled it out of me, you know. But yeah, we'll do another session again. Yeah.
Absolutely. The title of the show is for everyone involved, by the way. It expands mine, it expands the audience, but it absolutely will expand yours as well. And that's why we look forward to all of these, because we all learn and grow together, and we're all just sort of walking each other home. And walking with somebody like you makes it more fun, dude. The way you view the world is fascinating, and the way that you're able to see that in the rock, I wouldn't have seen it that way had you not have pointed it out. So I'm grateful for the new eyes to see things, man.
It's a pleasure as well. Let's just do it again and play some music.